Goblin launch detected.
Hey gang! Using the promo code MTGMudsta, all caps, will get you 10% off any order over $10 at Flipside Gaming. It'll also get you 10% off any orders of singles at Multizone. And it'll get you 10% off most products at Original Magic Art, with the exceptions of some paintings. If these fine sites don't have what you're looking for, you can also consider using my affiliate link when ordering from TCG Player. And if you'd like to join the generic Goblin Gang to support this channel, there's a link to my Patreon in the description below. Montreal, Magic. Montreal, Magic. That's right, this is another Magic Fest Montreal game. Today's game has me playing Mistform Ultimus, keeping in Griffin Canyon, 4 Islands, Sage of Fables, and Thada Adele. You all enjoy her playmat almost as much as I enjoy playing against her. Roxy is playing Alesha, keeping a Sulphurous Springs, a Scrubland, a Teferi's Protection, a Viscera Seer, a Dockside Extortionist, a Mountain, and Kaya's Guile. New to the channel is Sean playing his Scarab God deck, keeping an Island, an Oblivion Strike, a Jace Beleren, a Swan Song, Dimir Aqueduct, Silence the Believers, and Notion Rain. I just can't seem to get away from him, but Vincent is playing his Neheb deck, keeping a Mountain, Lavaclaw Reaches, Thespian Stage, Glinthorn Buccaneer, Dowsing Dagger, and Light Up the Stage. You might actually notice Vincent didn't have a playmat in this game, unlike his last 2 appearances. Sean wins the die roll and starts us off. Sean plays an Island. Vincent plays a tap Lavaclaw Reaches. I play an Island. Roxy plays a Scrubland. Sean plays a Dimir Aqueduct and bounces his island to his hand. He then discards Swan Song. Vincent plays a Mountain and casts Dowsing Dagger. He gives the plants to Sean and passes turn. I play the island I drew and pass. Roxy plays a Sulphurous Springs and casts Talisman of Indulgence. Sean replays his island and casts Jace Beleren. He upticks the Walker and has the table draw a card. Vincent plays a Thespian Stage as his land drop, and he brings out Neheb in his main phase before passing. I play another island and drop Thada Adele. Roxy plays a Mountain, and she casts Chainer Nightmare Adept before passing turn. Sean plays another island and casts Font of Mythos, which is kind of confusing in a Scarab God deck. He then upticks Jace Beleren again, drawing a card for everyone, which is upsetting Vincent as it's the opposite of what his commander wants. Vincent draws 3, 1 for turn and 2 from the font. He plays a Foily Blood Crypt, taking 2 to have it come in untapped, and equips his commander with the Dowsing Dagger. He goes at me with his commander, and I take the hit for 4. This makes every player discard a card from hand, and it also transforms the Dowsing Dagger into a Lost Veil. In his post-combat main phase, Vincent then casts Demonic Tutor, and he grabs a card for his hand. 3 mana is tapped for a Lost Veil for a Glinthorn Buccaneer, and Vincent passes while shuffling. I draw my cards for turn and play an island. I cast Lord of the Pearl Trident, pumping Thada Adele, and swing it at Roxy. She takes the hit for 3, and I go steal an artifact. I steal and cast her Soul Ring, and then tap the Soul Ring for a Sage of Fables, tapping an island as well, and I pass to Roxy. Roxy draws for turn and plays a command tower. She pays 1 white for a Resolute Watchdog, and then discards a card to chain her ability. This lets her cast the Dockside Extortionist from her yard, and she gains 2 treasures that enters, and Roxy passes. Sean draws and plays a swamp for his land for turn. He puts to stack Yahenni's Expertise, which all but wipes the board right now. And he resolves the Howling Mine as the free spell he gets to cast with the Expertise. Sean then upticks Jace again to draw the table a card. Vincent draws 4 cards for turn, which for almost any other deck would be fantastic. He plays a Strip Mine for turn, and casts Sunbird's Invocation. He follows up with a thematic compass and reveals his top 2 cards. Sadly, he can't cast any of them. And Vincent then heads to combat, hitting Jace before moving to his end step. He has to discard down to 7, and with the card being pitched, the Glinthorn Buccaneer deals 1 to each of Vincent's opponents. I draw 4 cards and cast Tribute Mage. This lets me go to my library and find a 2-costing artifact, which puts Lightning Greaves to my hand. I then play Reliquary Tower, and I cast the Greaves, putting them onto the Mage, before casting Relic of Progenitus. I then pass to Roxy. Roxy draws her cards for turn and plays a Flooded Strand, cracking it and losing 1 life to find a plateau. 3 mana is what's needed for Alesha, who then joins the party, and she's not too keen on trying too much with the relic out, so she passes, discarding down to 7. Sean draws his chunk of cards and plays an island. He upticks Jace again, drawing the table a card, and casts Geth's Grimoire. Things are starting to add up now, and Sean passes, discarding down to 7. Vincent draws his 4 for turn and plays a Swamp. He asks that if I'll unconditionally say yes to the next card he casts, but he keeps it vague, which really makes me uncomfortable. Oracle of Bones reveals why Vincent was trying to tempt me, and he resolves the Sunbird's Invocation trigger first. He reveals his top 4, one of which is a Ragemonger, which he casts for free. The Oracle then enters, and I don't think anyone would pick the free sorcery, and sure enough, it gets 2+1/+1 counters. Vincent then activates his Thespian Stage to become a copy of my Reliquary Tower. And he then pays to suspend a Wheel of Fate, and Vincent passes. I draw my cards, and play a land, and cast Rhystic Study, because missing triggers and drawing more cards is what I do best. I then bring out Mistform and give him some boots. I pass to Roxy, and at the end of turn, Roxy uses Anguished Unmaking and targets my relic. Not wanting to lose it before I use it, I activate the ability and exile all graveyards and draw a card. It resolves, and Roxy then uses one of her treasure tokens to cast Entomb, letting me draw from the study trigger, which I actually remember. She then puts Murderous Redcap to the yard, which is a great sign. Roxy draws half of her max hand size worth of cards, and plays a Plains before casting Demonic Tutor to search for a card. I draw from it, and Roxy then plays Anafenza, Kintree Spirit, letting me draw from it again. Sadly, she's 1 mana short from pretty much winning the game at this point, and she passes. She has to discard down to 7, which gives Sean another card before he draws his 4 for turn. Sean plays his own Reliquary Tower, and brings out a Scourge of the Fleets. With the spell on the stack, Roxy phases out thanks to Teferi's protection until her end of turn, and neither of them pay the 1 for the study, and I draw 2. The Scourge then enters, and with 3 islands under his control, only 2 creatures on my side and Vincent's side get bounced back to our hands. Sean then upticks Jace again to draw a card for everyone, and passes. Vincent downticks his Wheel of Fortune suspend counters and draws his 4. He brings out a Ragemonger, getting a Sunbird's Invocation trigger, and letting me draw 1 from the study trigger. He then casts Hazard's Monument, and I draw again from the study trigger. We then see a Towngarth Talrim Hero hit in the stack, and Vincent lets me draw once more, before casting a Siphon Mine for free with his Sunbird's Invocation. We all then discard a card, which also has Sean drawing a bunch with his Grimoire. Moving to combat, the Buccaneer heads at Sean, who doesn't block, and takes the 2. In Vincent's post-combat main phase, he plays his land for turn, a Swamp, and then recasts Oracle of Bones. He gets to resolve his Sunbird's trigger invocation again, and he casts Fellhide Spirit, while I draw from each of them as they hit the stack. He also resolves his monument triggers, discarding 2 and drawing 2, which triggers the Buccaneer and deals 1 to each of his opponents twice. The Oracle then enters, and Vincent asks Sean what the Oracle will give him. Sean agrees to give him the free spell, and Vincent casts Light Up the Stage, exiling his top 2 cards. I draw 4, and play an island, and pass. Roxy phases in and draws her 4 and drops a swamp. She moves to cast a Viscera Seer, which I counter with Arcane Denial, and this gives us both a delayed draw trigger that'll go off on Sean's upkeep. Roxy then loses 1 life to her Talisman, and then another life as she casts Reanimate to bring back the Seer. She then declares that she's heading to combat, and swings Alesha at me. She targets the Murderous Redcap with Alesha's trigger, paying the 2, and with the trigger on the stack, I flash in Venser to bounce back an Offensa to Roxy's hand. The Redcap enters, and deals 2 to Sean, and I take 5 from the rest of the creatures swinging. Roxy then moves to her post-combat main phase, and casts an Offensa, which has me using Rapid Hybridization to blow up the Viscera Seer. Responding to the removal spell, Roxy sacrifices the vampire to scry 1. She bottoms the card, and an Offensa resolves. Chris on the sidelines then decides to help me by putting a Die of Shame onto my Rhystic Study. Sean draws his cards for turn and plays a Swamp. He then main phases a Silence the Believers, paying to get a second target, and exiles the Redcap and an Offensa to neutralize Roxy's combo. This resolves, and Sean then upticks Jace to draw the table a card before passing turn. Vincent downticks the suspend counters and draws his chunk of cards. We see a Fellhide Petrifier come in, and I draw from it as Vincent resolves his Sunbird's trigger. He reveals his 3 and finds a Braid, blowing up my Greaves. He then casts Ruby Medallion, which has me drawing, while Vincent reveals Vandal Blast and blows up Sean's Grimoire. He plays an Ancient Tomb, and loses 2 life to tap it for 2 mana, and plays a Rageblood Shaman. He resolves a Monument trigger, discarding a card and drawing 1, and deals 1 to his opponents with the Buccaneer before resolving his Sunbird's Invocation trigger. He's then able to resolve Neheb, and lets me draw from the study trigger again. He discards a card to the Monument, drawing 1 and dealing 1 to his opponents. He then heads to combat, and swings 3 Minotaurs in Roxy's direction, dealing 8 damage. Vincent then goes to his end of turn, and exiles the Rakdos Charm that's sitting in exile from the Light Up the Stage. I draw 4 and play a Cavern of Souls, naming Wizards. This is tapped to help pay for a Stony Brook Banneret, and I then drop a Stunt Double. I have it come in as a copy of the Banneret, and then drop a reduced costing Azami before passing to Roxy. Roxy draws her 4, and casts Toxic Deluge, paying 5 life into the spell. Responding to the wipe, Vincent pays 6 mana to activate the Runehorn Hellkite's ability from his graveyard that he discarded earlier. This has us wheel, discarding our hands and drawing 7. At this point, Vincent's hand is large enough that when he discards his hand, it'll be enough for the Buccaneer to take Roxy out, and it forces her to use a Swords to Plowshares on Alesha, gaining her 3 life. We all then discard our hands and draw a fresh 7, with the triggers going off from the Buccaneer, and Roxy drops to 3 life. The Toxic Deluge then resolves and wipes away most of the board, and with nothing else, Roxy passes. Sean draws his 4 and plays a Cabal Coffers. He then plays a Raider's Wake before swinging his Scourge at Vincent. He then passes, and at the end of turn, Sean has Vincent discard a card, which has the Wake causing him to lose 2 life. Sean then passes. Vincent downticks his wheel, and he draws his 4. He pays 1 for his Soul Ring, which lets me draw a card, and reveals something that he can't cast from the Sunbird's Invocation. He then casts Theaters of Horror for 2, and reveals from his Sunbirds after letting me draw. He puts a Big Game Hunter from the 3 onto the field, who comes in and blows up Sean's Scourge. Vincent then makes 1 red, and loses 2 life from the Ancient Tomb for a Fanatic of Mogus, who triggers the Sunbirds, and I draw. Vincent is able to cast Outpost Siege for free, and I draw from that as well. We then move to resolve the Fanatic, who comes in, and Vincent has a devotion to red for 4, and unfortunately, this is enough to take Roxy out. Vincent then recasts Neheb, discarding a card to the Monument trigger, which has him losing 2 life from Raider's Wake. He then draws a card and passes. I draw and play a Seed of the Synod, and realize my stolen Soul Ring is gone as I'm about to cast my own Soul Ring. I then pass, and at the end of turn, Sean casts Vision Skynes, which has us all drawing even more cards. Vincent then sees this as an opportunity and uses his Strip Mine to take out my Reliquary Tower. With the ability on the stack, this forces me to use Cryptic Command to bounce Wake back to Sean's hand and draw a card. Sean says no to this with Negate though, and I draw a card from the Ristic Study trigger, lose the tower, and then have to discard down to 7, dying as a result. Sean resolves an Underworld Dreams for his turn, and down ticks Chase to only draw for himself. He plays a land, a swamp, and confident that he'll be able to deal with Vincent, pass his turn. At the end of turn, Vincent casts Fire Covenant, putting no life into it, and reveals his top 3 cards for the Sunbird's Invocation trigger. He casts the Sword of the Animus for free, and moves to his turn. Vincent stacks his triggers, putting the Wheel on first, then the Theater, and then the Outpost. He exiles a card to the Outpost first, and then the Theater, and neither of the cards will help him. So Vincent moves to resolve Terminate on his Big Game Hunter. He reveals his top 2, and casts Gusta's Scepter for free. He then taps it, and exiles a card from his hand underneath the Scepter. He then discards his hand to the Wheel resolving, losing 12 life, and then loses more life as he draws from the Wheel and his cards for turn. In his main phase, he then brings out a Kragma Warcaller, and then Neheb, Dreadhorde Champion. He does get the Sunbird's trigger from Neheb, and he's able to cast a Gyruper Orrery. This lets Vincent play out a Dragonskull Summit and a Mountain for his lands for turn, and he moves the sword onto Neheb, specifically his commander version. As all of his other Minotaurs have haste, Vincent is able to swing all out at Sean, doing just enough damage to close out the game. Game review time. So I know I missed a lot of Ristic Study triggers in this game, but unfortunately it probably would have done very little since the entire time that I was drawing 4 cards a turn, it was all hot garbage. I will say that I think I did a pretty decent job of keeping Roxy from going off. Her combo is pretty well telegraphed, and I was able to fight through it several times, but it cost me a lot of my resources. Sean's Scarab God deck was certainly interesting and not something that I typically see. He seemed more focused on forcing his opponents to draw and discard as opposed to using the Scarab God to bring back a bunch of zombie creatures for value. It was still cool to see, but I'd be interested to know if he ever casts his commander. Vincent's win this game I think was as much luck as it was from his skill. He was very close to dying, and using the Terminate on his Big Game Hunter was pretty much a Hail Mary. If he hadn't found that staff/scepter/whatever you want to call it from Alliances, he actually would have lost like Sean had intended. But you can't fault him for fighting back and getting through, and Sean might have wanted to consider a piece of removal or two, just in case Vincent lived through his draw step. Please be sure to tune in every Monday and Thursday at 11 AM Eastern Standard Time for a guaranteed new video. You can also follow me on Twitter at MTGMudsta. You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/MTGMudsta. And lastly, you can check me out when I stream at twitch.tv/MTGMudsta. This video is brought to you in support by my patrons. If you're looking for a way to help out the channel, please be sure to visit the link below. Thank you all for watching this video, and don't forget, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.